Imagine serving your country, then making a claim for benefits under the VA, and then being told that your claim can't be processed and your appeal of any benefits that you have that you contend are owed to you cannot be processed, cannot be adjudicated, all because Donald Trump wants to shut down the VA court system. And yes, there's a whole separate VA Court of Appeals that adjudicates these issues and benefits that may be owed to veterans. And Donald Trump was moving to try to shut them down, but a panel of judges has shut down the Trump administration's efforts to halt the ability of veterans to seek appeals of their benefits that have been denied. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. If you like this content, remember to hit that subscribe button before we jump in here. Brian, what are we talking about today? Let's talk about the VA, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the VA system.
Right. So let's start talking about that, because I think that's like the first thing that's sort of interesting here is that the United States Constitution provides for Article 3 judges. These are lifetime appointments. These are federal judges. This is not a Senate type approved federal court system. Instead, it is non-Article 3. They're not lifetime appointments. They're appointed, they're put into their position, and there's a number of judges and a number of lawyers who deal with veterans' appeals. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then if there's a result on a veteran appeal that the veteran doesn't agree with, he or she can then appeal it to this U.S. Court of Appeals for Veteran Claims. That's exactly what the court's called. And there's 9 judges, appellate judges on that court. And in this case, 3 of them heard this case. So what is this case? Let me just frame it very quickly. Believe it or not, the Trump administration, through the Veterans Administration head, went into the court and said, we want to stop right now all proceedings, all claims involving veterans in the United States during the government shutdown. Now, I can surmise the reason the Trump administration did this, Shant, is because they then want to go out, like they're trying to do with everything else, and say it's the Democrats' fault.
The Democrats are halting veterans' benefits. Yeah. And
Correct.
They kind of thought that their effort to do it would fly under the radar, maybe. But no, this is a public issue. It's a public hearing on it. And the court, a three-judge panel, stopped this and said, no, you can't do that. They called it extreme overreach and a violation of veterans' due process rights, which is exactly what it is. So just to be clear, going back to what Brian said, there's a separate U.S. Court of Appeals for veteran claims, where if someone makes a claim that they've been injured, they suffer from, and we'll talk about the conditions that often are the subject of these claims, but where they make a claim, and if that claim for benefits is denied, there is due process by which they can say, no, you got this wrong, here's more documentation, whatever the argument may be. And you have to imagine that a portion of these claims, I don't know exactly how much, I don't know what the statistics are, but a portion of these claims are valid claims that need to be adjudicated, and the court can say you need to provide more documentation, or the court can just rule that they should be paid these claims. Anyway, this is the whole system through which injured veterans that have claims are able to get their due process and get their claims paid and get the benefits that they are owed, so they can take care of their health, so they can address their injuries, often permanent, serious injuries. And the Trump administration literally went in there to shut this down. They said, no, we have a government shutdown. This whole court system that adjudicates these things, that gives veterans due process, needs to be shut down. And you're right. It's for political points. That's what it's for.
I want to give some statistics here. There are about 15,000 claims annually that go through this claims process. And there are apparently 15 to 20% of all claims made. Now, these are just claims made. 15 to 20% of all claims made are denied in whole or in part. So that may be part of a government strategy. It may be deny and see if these people come back and appeal. There are 300 lawyers that work in the department that deal with these denials. And then what happens when the denial occurs is the person actually goes out and makes a claim, and goes through this court process. So you're dealing with, I think there are as many as 15,000 claims that are pending through this system. I believe that's accurate.
That's what I've read based on my research, that there's 15,000 pending appeals that the Trump administration tried to throw off track, and the courts shut this down, and they said, no, these appeals stay on track. And, as lawyers, Brian, you and me that do, for example, that we do insurance, we handle insurance disputes. claims get denied all the time for oftentimes bullshit reasons. So,
and I want to focus on that. I want to hold you there for 1 second, because as soon as Trump became president this year in 2025, he immediately tightened eligibility for conditions like traumatic brain injuries and mental health issues by requiring stricter medical information. Now, okay. I got to just say this, is I watched a lot of rallies on television for Trump during the 2024 campaign, and I'm sure you did too, Shant. There were a lot of veterans out there waving Trump flags around, talking about how Trump was going to help them. As soon as he became president, he started making it more difficult for injured veterans, people with hearing loss, PTSD, mobility impairments to make claims. As soon as he became president.
Right. All in the name of trying to save money. I wouldn't be surprised if Doge or Elon Musk had something to do with tightening these requirements or raising the standards. And then, so he does that. And then now that there's a government shutdown that they've forced to occur, then they want to shut down the means by which these people seek due process and appeal the decisions made by the bureaucracy that denied their claim in the first place. So
when the shutdown started, there were at least 50,000 claims pending. Now, not all of them were being appealed. And we said already, we believe it's about 15,000, as our research showed, that are on some sort of claims appeal process, which means they go to one judge. That judge makes a decision. If they're unhappy, they go to this appellate division. And a lot of these are Iraq, Afghanistan area veterans. I mean, I hope folks can see the irony in all of this, right? The sad irony in all of this. Okay, so what does the court do, Shant?
The court shut him down. The court said that this is extreme overreach. They specifically talked about what I mentioned earlier, that this is a due process violation, because this is not very different. It might be set up through a different structure, but this is not very different than the due process rights of a civil litigant. Folks we represent who've been injured. This is not different than a criminal defendant who has the right to a trial. These are people that have a claim. They have an appeal of a denial of a claim, and they have the right to process it. So the court said that this is a due process violation, and that the government, the Trump administration, who is seeking to shut down the appeals process, lacked any specific evidence of harm that they would suffer by allowing these appeals to keep going on track. So.
But that's the good issue here for us to talk about for just a minute, which is the harm. So the Trump administration actually came in and said, there's no prejudice to these claimants if there's a pause. We're not saying that these cases get dismissed. We're just saying they get held. No decisions are made. The cases aren't dismissed. Well, the harm would be the veteran who doesn't have money to pay for food or his or her medical care. That would be the harm, I think, that might actually exist. And obviously this 3-judge panel believe the same thing. But the other thing, Sean, I wanted to point out was that most of these people that work at the Veterans Administration have not been sent home. They're just working without pay. Now, that's terrible, and we don't like that idea at all. But it isn't like there's a staff shortage. In fact, I think statistically, there's like less than 3% of the people in the entire Veterans Administration that have been sent home. So 97%, including, I guess, these 300 lawyers that work there, are still working.
Yeah. And what was sort of offensive about it is even with this, even with the loss, the Trump administration saw this as an opportunity to politicize the shutdown and say, well, we're going to comply. The quote was, the VA will comply with the ruling and make the necessary personnel work without pay during the Democrats' government shutdown to adjudicate all pending cases. That was like what their press office sent out, which is like, even when you lose, you try to spin it and politicize it in your favor. I mean, that was just, I don't know, adding insult to injury, in my opinion. I'd be pissed off if I was a veteran and I saw this. It's like, why were you even trying to shut it down to begin with?
And just to round out my comment on this, or reporting more than comment, is that Carolyn Leavitt, the White House spokesperson, said that it was the Democrats' fault. And I believe that then they went after judges as being, Democrats or liberals or whatever. That's completely not true. And then the head of the VA, this former Republican Congress member, called the shutdown "holding my veterans hostage." So that was their strategy. I think I started out saying that, and that was their strategy in the first place here, was they wanted to stop these payments, they wanted to stop the process, and then turn around and blame the Democrats.
Yeah, that's what they wanted to do. I have an I have a great quote that I found from the person who is the national vice chair of the Veterans for Common Sense. It's an advocacy group on behalf of veterans. And he said, some of those veterans have already waited 10, 20, or even 50 years for VA, the law, and the science to allow them to file claims for toxic exposures such as Agent Orange and burn pits. If the VA had prevailed, these veterans could have faced indefinite delays for their benefits and in some cases for their care. And his final line really, I think, sums it up. Trump sought to make those veterans wait longer, and that's unconscionable. I agree. A move like this to try to take this and turn it into a political sword or a talking point is truly unconscionable, in my opinion. So I don't know what else I'd add to that. This is a fascinating issue. We'll see. They haven't indicated, the VA and the Trump administration hasn't indicated that they would appeal this or try to do this again, but they have left a door open. They said something along the lines of, we'll comply, but we'll see, we'll refile our motion if the circumstances change. Meaning they haven't totally given up on it. They want to keep this option open. They want to politicize veterans' struggle to get their benefits paid, which is, I think, unconscionable. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Thanks for tuning in again. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you like this content. Share with us any feedback or questions you have. We love hearing from you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.